My mom called me a failure compared to my sisters, but their careers fell apart when they learned I owned the tower they worked in. My mom called me a failure. My sisters made her beam with pride. But I made her question everything when she discovered their fancy careers depended on a building I secretly owned. Hey there, I'm Christopher, 32, and I grew up in a house where I was treated like an afterthought. My mom, Patricia, worshipped my three sisters like they were destined for greatness while treating me like I was just taking up space. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, you'll understand what I'm about to tell you. My dad, Robert, disappeared when I was 7. One day he was flipping pancakes in our Denver kitchen. The next day his closet was empty and Mom was crying into her coffee mug. She never got over it, and somehow, I became her daily reminder of the man who abandoned her. Patricia poured everything into my sisters. Amanda, the eldest, was destined for medical school with her perfect grades and volunteer work at Denver General. Rebecca had this sharp mind for numbers and dreamed of working on Wall Street. And Natalie, the baby, could argue her way out of anything and had law school written all over her future. Mom acted like she was assembling some kind of professional dream team. Meanwhile, I was the mistake that reminded her of Dad's betrayal. She'd say things like, "Boys figure it out on their own. Girls need guidance and support." Translation: every dollar and ounce of attention goes to your sisters. The breaking point came when I was 17, looking at colleges. I sat down with Mom to discuss the college fund my grandparents had set up for me when I was born. She shifted in her chair, avoiding eye contact, then dropped the bomb. "Christopher, I had to redistribute that money. Your sisters' futures are more important. They'll contribute to society in meaningful ways. You're like your father. You'll find a way." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. $20,000, gone. Handed over to fund Amanda's pre-med courses, Rebecca's business school applications, and Natalie's debate camp. I stared at her, processing the betrayal. "So I'm supposed to take out loans while they get my inheritance?" She shrugged with this cold indifference that still haunts me. "Life isn't fair, Christopher. Your sisters will make respectable careers. You'll figure something out." That night, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of begging or pleading, I chose a different path. While they saw medicine, banking, and law as the only respectable careers, I saw something they didn't. Someone has to build the hospitals, banks, and law firms where they'd eventually work. I declared my major, construction management and civil engineering. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Patricia looked at me like I'd announced I was joining a circus. "You want to be a construction worker? After everything I've tried to teach you about respectability?" I smiled and said something that would echo for years. "Mom, someone has to design and build the towers where Amanda, Rebecca, and Natalie will work. Might as well be me." She went silent, but I could see the wheels turning. In her mind, I just confirmed every fear she had about me becoming another version of my father. College hit me like a freight train loaded with concrete blocks. While my sisters glided through their programs with Mom's financial backing, I juggled classes with backbreaking jobs just to keep the lights on. My typical day started at 4:30 a.m. hauling rebar at Morrison Construction, then racing to campus smelling like sawdust and sweat for afternoon lectures. Professors wrinkled their noses when I sat down, and my classmates gave me a wide berth. I didn't care. Every sore muscle was proof I was moving forward. The family dinners were torture sessions. Amanda would talk about her anatomy classes while cutting her prime rib delicately. Rebecca discussed market trends over her Caesar salad. Natalie debated constitutional law between bites of Mom's famous pot roast. Then Patricia would turn to me with this fake interest and ask, "And how's your construction thing going?" "It's going great," I'd say, wiping my hands on my napkin. "Learning how to build the offices where these three will spend their careers." The table would go quiet except for the sound of silverware clinking against plates. Patricia's jaw would tighten, and she'd change the subject back to something respectable. The breaking point came during Thanksgiving my junior year. The house was packed with relatives, and Mom was in her element, showing off her accomplished daughters. Amanda had just gotten accepted to Columbia Medical School. Rebecca landed a summer internship at Goldman Sachs. Natalie was already talking to Harvard Law. Then Uncle Frank asked me what I was studying. "Construction management and civil engineering," I said proudly. "I'm learning how to build everything from office complexes to hospitals." Before I could explain my vision, Patricia cut me off with her trademark sneer. "Don't make it sound impressive, Christopher. He's basically learning to be a glorified handyman." The whole table erupted in laughter. Cousins snickered into their stuffing. Amanda rolled her eyes. Rebecca smirked like she was watching a comedy show. Natalie just shook her head in embarrassment. I sat there calmly, cutting my turkey, letting their laughter wash over me. Inside, I was memorizing every face, every cruel smile. When the noise died down, I looked up with a grin that made a few people uncomfortable. You're absolutely right, Mom. Someone's got to fix the plumbing in Amanda's hospital, manage Rebecca's office building, and repair the courthouse where Natalie will practice. Good thing you've got me. The laughter stopped. Patricia's face went red, but I wasn't done. And hey, when you're all sitting in your fancy offices someday, just remember who taught himself to build them. I excused myself, grabbed my jacket, and walked out into the crisp Denver night. As I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic, I made myself a promise. I would build something so big, so undeniable, that they'd have to eat every mocking word. That was the last family dinner where I tried to explain myself. From then on, I let my work do the talking. After that Thanksgiving disaster, I moved out of Patricia's house and into a studio apartment above Murphy's Auto Repair on Colfax Avenue. The place smelled like motor oil and had a radiator that clanked like a ghost in chains, but it was mine. I threw myself into work with obsessive focus. Days blended together in a haze of concrete dust and caffeine. I'd finish my morning shift pouring foundations, race to campus for engineering classes, then pull night shifts doing drywall repair for a guy named Big Tony who paid cash and didn't ask questions. My hands were permanently stained with calluses and paint. My back ached from lifting steel beams. But every paycheck went straight into my future empire fund, a coffee can hidden under my mattress because I didn't trust banks. Not after what happened with Rebecca. See, I needed a small business loan to buy better equipment. $5,000 to upgrade from borrowed tools to my own operation. I figured maybe, just maybe, family could show some decency. So I swallowed my pride and walked into First National Bank of Colorado where Rebecca worked as a junior loan officer. She was sitting behind this polished desk in her sharp business suit, looking every inch the successful banker Mom always bragged about. I laid out my business plan, my projected earnings, everything. Rebecca barely glanced at the papers. Christopher, banks don't give loans to people like you. You don't have the credentials or collateral. Maybe try saving up instead of playing pretend businessman. People like me? I leaned forward. You mean people who actually work for a living instead of shuffling papers all day? Her face flushed, but she stuck to her script and denied my application. I walked out and got financing from a credit union 3 blocks away that same afternoon. 6 months later, I started Rockwell Construction with 2 employees, myself and Danny Rodriguez, a guy I met at community college who knew plumbing like Michelangelo knew marble. We worked out of Danny's garage, bidding on small jobs nobody else wanted. Our first contract was fixing the roof on Panchero's Mexican Grill after a hailstorm. $800, and we had to supply our own ladder. But when we finished, the owner shook my hand and said, "You boys do good work. I'll remember that." Word spread slowly through Denver's small business network. Fix one leak, get referred to repair another. Replace one broken window, get called to renovate a whole storefront. We weren't getting rich, but we were getting noticed. The family, of course, found ways to mock my progress. At Amanda's medical school graduation party, Patricia made sure everyone knew about my little construction hobby. She stood in our old living room, champagne glass in hand, telling neighbors about her doctor daughter while barely acknowledging my existence. And Christopher, she said when pressed, well, he fixes things. It's honest work, I suppose. Honest work. Like being a doctor or lawyer was somehow dishonest. I just smiled and nodded, thinking about the commercial renovation project I'd just landed. A whole office building that needed updating. The biggest job Rockwell Construction had ever tackled. I didn't tell them about it. Why would I? They'd made it clear I was the family embarrassment. Let them keep thinking I was just Patricia's handyman son while I quietly built something they couldn't ignore. By my late 20s, Rockwell Construction had evolved from Danny and me working out of his garage to a legitimate operation with 12 employees and an office in Loudoun. Not much to look at, just a converted warehouse space with concrete floors and exposed beams, but it had my name on the door and contracts stacked on my desk. The big break came through pure hustle and a little bit of luck. Denver was booming, and everyone wanted a piece of the downtown development action. The problem was, most general contractors were either too expensive or too busy to handle mid-size projects. I found the sweet spot: office buildings, medical complexes, and professional centers that were too big for handymen but too small for the major players. My crew could turn a gutted space into gleaming offices faster and cheaper than anyone in the city. The family still had no clue what I was actually building. To them, I was still Christopher the construction guy who showed up to holiday dinners with dirt under his fingernails and wore flannel shirts to fancy restaurants. Patricia continued her tradition of passive-aggressive comments. At Rebecca's engagement party, she introduced me to her bridge club friends as my son who works with his hands. Like manual labor was some kind of genetic defect. But I was learning something powerful: silence is the best revenge. Every snide comment, every dismissive look, every time they treated me like I was beneath their notice, I just smiled and filed it away. Because I was building something none of them understood. The turning point came when Pinnacle Development Group approached me about a joint venture. They had the capital and bonding capacity for a major downtown project, but they needed a local contractor who could deliver quality work on budget and on time. The project? A 24-story mixed-use tower at 17th and Winecoop. Office space, retail, parking. The kind of building that changes a city's skyline. Most contractors would have jumped at the construction fee and walked away happy. But I saw something bigger. When Pinnacle offered me the choice between a flat fee or a smaller fee plus equity stake in the building, I didn't hesitate. "I'll take the equity," I told them. They looked surprised. "You sure? The cash flow won't start for at least 2 years." "I'm not worried about cash flow," I said. "I'm thinking about the long game." 6 months later, we broke ground on what would become Meridian Tower. My crew poured concrete, raised steel, and installed glass while I walked the site every morning before dawn, watching my vision take shape against the Denver sky. The family still had no idea. Patricia would ask how work was going, and I'd just say, "Can't complain. Staying busy." If they had bothered to look up from their own careers for 5 seconds, they might have noticed the Rockwell construction signs around the city. They might have driven past the job sites where my crews were transforming downtown Denver. But they were too busy being impressed with themselves to notice I was building the city around them. That would change soon enough. Because while they were focused on their impressive titles and professional networks, I was creating something that would literally tower over all of them. And the best part? I never said a word. Patricia's 65th birthday party was supposed to be her grand performance. She'd rented the ballroom at the Brown Palace Hotel, invited half of Denver's professional class, and spent weeks planning her speech about raising successful children. I almost didn't go. But something inside me, call it curiosity or masochism, wanted to see her in action one more time. Plus, Meridian Tower had just opened to its first tenants, and I was feeling particularly confident about my place in the world. The ballroom was packed with people I vaguely recognized from childhood: neighbors, family friends, distant relatives. Everyone dressed to impress, clutching wine glasses and making small talk about their children's accomplishments. I walked in wearing my best suit, still off the rack from Men's Warehouse, but clean and pressed. A few people nodded politely. Most just stared like they weren't quite sure why the construction guy was there. Amanda was holding court near the bar, discussing her residency at Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital. Rebecca was networking with some banking colleagues, talking about interest rates and investment portfolios. Natalie was debating criminal justice reform with a group of lawyers. And me? I found a quiet corner and watched the show. Dinner proceeded exactly as I expected. Patricia stood up with a microphone, radiant in her burgundy dress, and launched into her prepared remarks about motherhood and success. The crowd hung on every word as she detailed Amanda's medical achievements, Rebecca's rise in banking, and Natalie's promising legal career. Then she paused, her eyes finding me across the room. "And of course, there's Christopher." Her voice shifted, becoming cooler. "Well, let's just say 3 out of 4 children made me proud. The 4th made me wonder if he was even mine." The room erupted in laughter. People actually applauded. Amanda covered her mouth, trying not to giggle. Rebecca shook her head with that familiar look of embarrassment. Natalie just stared at her wine glass. But I didn't flinch. I stood up slowly, and the laughter began to die down. "You know what, Mom?" My voice carried clearly across the ballroom. "You're right. I'm not what you expected. I didn't become a doctor, banker, or lawyer. But while you've been busy pretending I don't exist, I've been building something you can't ignore." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a leather folder. "Inside here are the ownership documents for Meridian Tower. You know, that big glass building downtown? The one where Rebecca's bank just opened their flagship branch and Natalie's law firm signed a 10-year lease." The room went dead silent. I could hear the ice melting in people's drinks. My gift tonight was going to be sharing this success with all of you. But after what you just said, I tucked the folder back into my jacket. consider it mine alone. Patricia's face had gone white. Rebecca's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the marble floor. Natalie looked like she was trying to solve a math problem in her head. Dad may have left when I was 7, I continued, my voice steady and calm, but at least he never stood in a room full of people and questioned whether I belonged to this family. I looked around the ballroom one last time. Enjoy your party, Mom. After tonight, you won't need to worry about being embarrassed by your son anymore. Because you won't have one. I walked out through the stunned silence, my footsteps echoing off the marble floors. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The call started at sunrise. Patricia left 3 voicemails before I even had my coffee, each one more desperate than the last. The first was angry, Christopher, you embarrassed me in front of everyone. Call me back immediately. The second was manipulative, we need to talk about this like adults. Family doesn't abandon family. The third was almost pleading, please don't let one mistake ruin everything. One mistake. 25 years of being treated like a disappointment, and she called it one mistake. My sisters were more predictable. Rebecca texted, that was completely unnecessary. Do you have any idea how that looked to our clients? Always worried about appearances, just like Mom. Amanda called around noon. Chris, I know we haven't always been fair to you, but publicly humiliating Mom wasn't the answer. She's been crying all morning. Where were your tears when she was humiliating me every holiday for the past decade? I asked. Silence on the other end. Then, that's different. How? She hung up. Natalie was the last to reach out, and honestly, her message surprised me. I've been thinking about what you said last night, and you're right. We treated you terribly. Mom was wrong, and we just went along with it because it was easier. I'm sorry. I stared at that text for a long time. An apology. After all these years. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust, and it sure doesn't give back the college fund or the years of humiliation. Patricia escalated when she realized I wasn't answering her calls. She showed up at my office on Thursday afternoon, marching past my receptionist like she owned the place. I was reviewing blueprints for a new project when she barged into my office. You're still my son, she announced, settling into the chair across from my desk like she was claiming territory. No matter what dramatic scene you made at my party, you can't just erase family. And families help each other. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile. But her voice still carried that same entitled tone that had dominated my childhood. Help each other? I said. Like when you helped yourself to my college fund? Or when you helped convince everyone I'd never amount to anything? Her jaw tightened. That's ancient history, Christopher. I did what I thought was best at the time. But now you're successful, and I need you to step up. Your sisters can't cover everything, and I have expenses. There it was. The real reason for her visit. Not an apology, not regret, money. You know what, Mom? I stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown Denver. Meridian Tower gleamed in the afternoon sun, 24 stories of steel and glass with my signature on every beam. For years, you told me I'd never be the man of the house. That I'd never be responsible enough to take care of family. I turned back to face her. You were right. I'm not the man of your house. I built my own. Her face went through several emotions, confusion, anger, and finally something that might have been fear. Maybe Dad didn't leave because he was irresponsible, I continued. Maybe he left because he got tired of being treated like he was never good enough. That hit like a physical blow. Patricia clutched her purse strap, her knuckles white. Don't you dare compare yourself to that man, she whispered. Why not? We both figured out that some families aren't worth saving. I walked to my office door and held it open. You can leave now. And next time, call for an appointment. She stood up slowly, her composure cracking. You'll regret this, Christopher. Family is all you have in the end. No, Mom. Family is what you choose. And I choose not to choose you. After she left, I sat in my office as the sun set over the city I'd helped build, thinking about the man who'd disappeared from our kitchen all those years ago. For the first time in my life, I wondered if maybe he'd been the smart one. 2 years have passed since that birthday party confrontation, and my life has settled into a rhythm I never imagined possible. Rockwell Construction now employs 43 people and has projects running from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. We're not just building anymore, we're shaping how Colorado grows. The silence from my family has been complete and, honestly, liberating. No more obligatory holiday appearances. No more walking on eggshells around Patricia's moods. No more being the family disappointment at every gathering. But the past has a way of finding you when you least expect it. Last month, I hired a private investigator to find Robert Henderson, my father. It took her 6 weeks, but she tracked him to a small construction company in Bozeman, Montana. Henderson and Sons Construction. Turns out, after he left Denver, he started over completely. Built a new life, married a woman named Carol, raised 2 stepchildren who actually appreciate him. I spent 3 days staring at his business website before I finally picked up the phone. Henderson Construction, this is Bob. His voice was older, rougher, but unmistakably the same man who used to flip pancakes in our kitchen. Hi, Dad. It's Christopher. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, Jesus, Chris? Where did you get this number? Private investigator. We need to talk. He agreed to meet me in Denver the following weekend. Neutral ground, he called it. We settled on a diner in Arvada, away from downtown where someone might recognize me. Walking into Murphy's Diner at 10 a.m. on a Saturday, I spotted him immediately. He was sitting in a back booth, coffee cup in his weathered hands, wearing a flannel shirt and work boots that had seen better days. 25 years older, gray hair instead of brown, but still my father. You look good, son, he said as I slid into the opposite seat. Successful. I do okay. I ordered coffee from the waitress, then looked him straight in the eye. Why did you leave? He sighed, the sound of a man who'd been waiting decades for that question. Because your mother made it clear every single day that I wasn't the husband she wanted or the father she thought you kids deserved. No matter what I did, how hard I worked, how much I provided, it was never enough. So you just disappeared. I tried to take you with me, Chris. Fought for custody, but Patricia had better lawyers and a more sympathetic story. Single mother of 4 versus construction worker who abandoned his family. The court sided with her every time. My coffee arrived, but I couldn't taste it. All these years, I'd assumed he'd simply walked away from us. I never considered that maybe he'd been forced out. I wrote you letters, he continued. Sent birthday cards, Christmas presents. She returned them all unopened. After 5 years of fighting to be part of your life and getting nowhere, I had to choose, keep banging my head against that wall or start over somewhere else. You could have tried harder. Maybe. He nodded. But Chris, staying in that house was killing me. Your mother had this way of making me feel worthless every single day. Like everything I did was wrong, everything I provided wasn't good enough. Sound familiar? It sounded exactly familiar. The constant criticism, the dismissive comments, the way Patricia could make you feel like a failure even when you were succeeding. I heard about your company, he said, pulling out his phone and showing me Rockwell Construction's website. Been following your work for years. I'm proud of you, son. Those words hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time anyone in my family had said they were proud of me? We talked for 3 hours. About his new life in Montana, about my business, about the years we'd lost. When I finally told him about the birthday party confrontation, he actually smiled. Good for you, he said. I never had the backbone to stand up to her like that. Maybe I should have. As we walked to our cars, he handed me a business card. If you ever want to expand into Montana, give me a call. Henderson & Sons could use a partner with your expertise. Henderson & Sons? Well, he grinned, one of those sons could be you, if you're interested. I drove back to Denver with my mind spinning. All these years, I thought I was fighting to prove myself worthy of a family that didn't want me. Now I realized I'd been free all along, free to choose my own family, my own definition of success, my own path forward. The next morning, I called him back. Dad? About that partnership, let's talk. 6 months later, Rockwell Henderson Construction broke ground on our first joint project, a medical complex in Billings that will employ half the town and change the skyline forever. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to keep. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up, it's growing up. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't proving them wrong about you. It's proving yourself right about who you really are. Patricia can keep her perfect daughters and her respectable careers. I'll keep building the world they work in, one steel beam at a time. And now I'm not building it alone. If this story resonated with you, imagine what other untold stories are out there waiting to be discovered.